To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to Prophetic, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history. Todd,
hey,
welcome back.
Howdy ho, thanks for having me back.
To the Prophetic Podcast.
Happy to be here.
Second time.
Yeah, number 2. Excited to be here.
Only my
Excited
niece is the other, or my sister, the other repeat
Really?
guest. Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah, I've gotten an opportunity to listen to both those. Are really good, man.
You like?
Yeah, man.
You like the way it's coming out?
I enjoy these conversations. It's really like to get some real perspective on the overview of what's going on here. You know, to somebody just walking off the street, it'd be like, hey, there's just two dudes talking about random stuff. But, you know, what it appears to me to be is this, like, overarching theme of, you know, let's do a little bit of an inventory on all these lives to some extent, right? Let's find out, not even intentionally, but just through conversation, you know, the different ways people have come to be, the different ways people have come to live, the reasons behind that, the events that occurred in their lives that have put them in a place where they feel the way they feel or believe what they believe in, and therefore live this particular kind of life, you know, that allows them to, like, be happy and be content, or at least, you know, get them in that right direction. Right. So, you know, having some time to listen to a few of those has been pretty cool. It gives me a better understanding of what you're doing and what this is kind of leading towards.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't really intentional.
Sure.
It was, well, I know we want to be able to have an ongoing discussion. What is that? Why is that? What is the point of it? Is it just, you know, it's not just me sitting down talking with friends and family or other people. You know, a couple historians locally that I want to talk with, but that's not really the point of the podcast. And we touched on it briefly. It was about the 3rd or 4th episode where it's like, oh, this is the theme. This is what we're doing, why we're doing it. And then what has come out of that is, you know, everybody talks about world change, world peace, whatever. Fine, these are great ideas. Some utopian philosophical exercise. But no matter what that is, let's say on a 8 billion person globe, the only way it happens is one person at a time. And in the case of discussion, or let's say inventory, I mean, people don't have to do this stuff alone by themselves, but it happens one at a time, with 2 people, 3 people, a small group of friends, right? Some mentor or coach or sponsor or friends or within a family even. Like, this is how change happens, one person at a time. So in the bigger scope of things, it just seems like whatever we're going to do as a result of the pyramid work, which is, you know, a new base assumption, a new how, produces a new when, a new who, and a new what and why, and then this gives us a lens by which we can reinterpret 5,000 years of civilization's history, right?
Yeah, no, it blows the door wide open.
But then what is that? How do you process that? Well, you would do it the same way we're processing this one-on-one stuff, you know?
Well, ideally, yeah, you would start asking the logical questions and start looking at, you know, whatever evidence you do have. You know what I mean?
Right. Or whatever you can see accurately.
Yeah. And like factual pieces and parts, right?
Right.
And, you know, but I think the outcome inevitably is like this next level of open-mindedness, right? Like being able to consider things that you would never consider before,
right?
Know, as a result of newfound evidence, or you know what I mean?
Information,
yeah, new information. So,
and that's why I use like the adoption analogy. It's very similar to that. Like, I don't think people are truly ignorant of why they do what they do, but there's so many layers, right? I mean, you've been on this process of self-examination.
Sure.
Excuse me. For how long?
Almost 20 years, just shy of 19 years.
Okay, so let's just call that well-worn practice.
Yeah.
I mean, and so for anybody, that's 20 years worth of, let's call it a practice, a spiritual practice, an interpersonal self-examination, inventory, and ultimately in the broader umbrella of asking the perennial questions: who are we, where we're going. Importantly, how did we get here specifically, right? Causes and conditions, you know. So in that whole practice, which I'm not suggesting people just run off and just do it on their own, or what is a good framework. You know, obviously we do ours in a 12-step structure.
Sure.
But there's others, you know, Big Dave was talking about his personal development, a process and business that he's involved in. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of ways to do it. But I think the point is to do it together with other people who are on a similar wavelength. People might do it in therapy. People might do it, you know, even group setting stuff.
Sure.
So does that make sense?
I mean, it does. I think in this conversation, we need to clarify, you know, maybe why one would do that, right? What would motivate them, and then how they would go about finding a way to do that. You know what I mean? And what is that? What is that? What are we talking about? Like, are we talking about quality of life? Are we talking about navigating through life? And then identifying, you know, what life is supposed to look like, what my life is supposed to look like, right? Or what do I want it to be?
Right.
How did I come to understand that that's what I wanted, or the direction I needed to go, or felt like I was, I was led to go. So there's a lot of questions in this whole conversation.
Yeah.
And as far as the audience is concerned, it's probably, you know, understanding, you know, the whole idea, or what we're actually talking about here. You know what I'm saying? So whether we're trying to answer the questions, those perennial questions, or we're trying to find legit answers to that through this process of trying to identify, you know, how you feel, what you believe, how you live, how you came to start living like this, that whole process, good, bad, and the ugly, you know, or if we're just trying to put the pieces together, you know, as we go through this and as we talk to these people, right?
Right.
So, you know, because most people walking around here aren't concerned about these questions. I don't think so. I think we're very concerned about ourselves, what we have, what we don't have.
Right.
You know what I mean? What we want, how do I get it, or don't want, or how to, you know, whatever. You know, how, you know, what's this going to look like when I turn 65? Am I going to be able to retire? You know, that question doesn't start showing up for guys like me until you're like,
50.
52,
turning 53.
Yeah. So, I mean, this, you know, this whole subject matter is super, in my opinion, it's pretty complex. I don't know if it's
complex, layered.
Yeah, very layered, and you know, my understanding of you know, humanity, civilization, you know, the day to day is, you know, my take is basically been formed based on what I've seen, a little bit I've read,
right?
You know, conversations I've had with you, about real information, right? But not just your ideas, right?
Yeah. Wade mentioned this too. It's like, and in Jeremy also, it's like most people live an ahistorical life for the most part. It's like, yeah, you might go back to, let's say, your grandparents' experience or what you might garner from that.
Yeah.
I think we give kind of a cursory understanding or acknowledgement of our cultural setting, national setting, this kind of thing. Like, and so, and then it also depends on where you are, right? Obviously, these are all couched in the perennial questions. It's like, where are you? Well, I was born in 1970, so give or take my first few years, end of the Vietnam War. Like, what does that culture look like? My parents, children of 50s and 40s parents, it's like, yeah, maybe they were a little fucked up,
Yeah.
I mean,
But
the hippie movement, I don't know.
Right?
I mean, I think so.
Or are we
but-
fucked up?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
No,
of course. No,
I don't wanna get
it's,
off
but
in the
it's like,
weeds.
where does the fuck up start?
Yeah.
What-
Or maybe that was the right way, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm just hypothetically, to really say one was better than the. Now, there are things that you can definitively look at and say, that was fucked up. But I'm very careful to take sides in those cases. I really am. Now, to most people, it would be very straightforward. But since I've started learning since I've started the spiritual journey about, learning what all of that really means and how all of that being history, these events, whether it's in my life, your life, in our country's life, whatever it is, based on how I've kind of come up over the last, 19 years, I've come to learn that, humans are 100% fallible. And the inventory that is taken is for everybody to take, right? On themselves, on their country, on their, on the humanity in which they're involved in, the civilization in which they're part of, right? So, like, understanding that, if you want to get into assets and liabilities and stuff like that, or just to touch on it real quick, to go back and say that, the Vietnam War was bad. I don't know anything really about the Vietnam War, but I know enough to say that, the general consensus is that it was a messed up campaign from the very beginning, right? And that nobody won. Just a lot of people died. And as far as politics are concerned, I don't get into that. I don't know anything about it. I just know a little bit of the history based on what I've probably watched in a documentary or read.
Right.
And ultimately, I can say, or I guess generally speaking, I could say that was bad. A lot of people died.
Yeah.
But to say that nothing good came out of it, or from it, or as a result, I think I would be naive to say that, especially based on what I believe today, right?
Yeah, and that's basically what you're saying is you're super careful, like assigning a judgment to this is good, this is bad, this is, harmful, helpful, necessary, unnecessary. But I think that's the criteria. It's like when let's say we look at our own behavior, environment, nature, nurture, whatever, I think there's a level of criteria. Was it necessary? Was it not necessary? Was it helpful? Does it appear helpful, harmful? Does it appear positive, negative on the outcome side? So, and I think obviously myself, anyone in the audience, it's like trust your own assessment and kind of land on something, but then be open to modification, right?
Sure.
It's like the first Iraq War, weapons of mass destruction. We're sold this whole fucking ordeal. And it's like, turns out not to be true.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Yeah.
So, right? It's I think during like a stoic position would be just observe, analyze, don't overreact immediately or anything, because some of this stuff, let's say freedom of information requests or release information, 50 years? You're going to wait 50 years for some of this to be released. Yeah. So it's hard to know, certainly, in those structures, right?
But what, like, just a small piece of that example, right? So the Iraqi War. Clearly based on just the little bit of information that's available to the public, a bit of a false pretense, right?
Yeah.
To invade another country. I listen to a couple of podcasts that is based on special forces guys, SEALs and stuff like that, guys that are not active duty anymore, that are in the private sector or are private contractors that still go over there, and just had a lot of experience during that first initial conflict. And I hear them talk about some of their missions and some of their operations, and they, in this particular one, they talked about the guy that found Saddam Hussein in the hole.
Right.
Anyways, long story short, he fast forward. They have this little interaction piece here, about 2 or 3 minutes, where they talk about Saddam Hussein and what he's done and how he operated, and all of the kind of borderline genocide that he was involved in or caused or promoted, right? And a lot of it it's messed up. Like, guys like that, in my opinion, don't need to exist. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? From a good versus evil standpoint, like that guy, he's like they got rid of that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not. I don't want to get off into this thing here,
Sure.
but I'm just saying, like, sometimes you can look at it and say, okay, false pretense. That was something that came out of it that was probably not bad.
Right. Now here let's take some assessment of a thing like that.
Okay.
And then now let's rewind to like the end of World War II. We're literally seeding these fiefdoms to given people within regions within the Middle East. Okay. We create this idea of out of the Ottoman Empire, separate fiefdoms. We don't whomever doesn't want just one unified Muslim nation.
Yeah.
Okay? So you divide and conquer. And so Saddam comes out of that heritage.
Yeah.
Right? Iran comes out of that heritage. The Saudi family comes out of that heritage.
Yeah.
Where we're going to split it all up and we're going to make a fiefdom, and this guy is going to be in charge of this family, or da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we cry wolf when one of them misbehaves. I'm just saying there's another cause behind the cause.
There's layers, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, it's, for me to just point out that one little piece is just a minor example.
Right,
Now,
right.
that's not something you go to war with another country that has nothing to do
Right,
with us at the
right.
level of like a social level, right? But yeah, no, at the end, you can step back 50, 60, 70 years and go, this is where this started. This is how this happened.
Right.
As a result of this, you never would have seen it until now. And this is our responsibility. We have a hand in this, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know. It's
And then, and then it spins off into nation building, and it spins off to 20 years in Afghanistan. It
Yeah.
spins off to, we're going to give people worldwide this quasi-democratic freedom.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I don't want to get off in
no,
in those
I'm
ways,
just
but yeah,
saying
no,
that
that's
in any analysis, we got to look at the causes and conditions. What came before? What was
Yeah.
the environment? All that stuff. So,
yeah, it's very it's some pretty complex stuff to even just casually talk about it, because there's so many different moving parts to all of
yeah.
that.
Well, it's like trying to understand the U.S. without
Yeah.
understanding the desire to get out from underneath the rule of who was it, King, whoever. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just lost it.
That's all right. I get what you're saying.
Or the Church of England, which were one and the same.
Yeah.
So to understand the rebel nation, it's like each new rebellion becomes its own new authority, and this just keeps trickling, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, wait, you're going to do exactly what you just rebelled against at some point.
Yeah, you're going to do it better.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, parenting and in our lives, it's like, well, I guess I'm making a lot of the same mistakes.
Yeah. There's a little bit of insanity there with that whole process.
Well, thus the judgment trigger is like the hypocrite trigger.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can you can judge this all day long and da 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 da, but it's like almost whoever speaks first is bound to be wrong. It's like, here's my stance, here's my claim. Yeah. With more information, we see that there's hypocrisy in like everything. So
yeah, and so from an individual's perspective, like for me, the example would be like, you know, so come down from that 40,000 foot view, and my grandfather was, I believe, first generation immigrated from Austria, and I've got one uncle. He had 2 kids, and I don't know my brother or my Uncle Fred. I don't know, even on my mom's side, I don't know any of her sisters. I don't have any cousins. I have cousins. I have aunts. I just don't know any of them, right? So I really didn't have a lot to base. I didn't have like this familial history to either learn or emulate or go off of, right? And parents divorced at about 9 years old, so and my mom was married a bunch of times, and I have 5 brothers, all by different fathers, and it's just an interesting family tree. I've got relationships with 3 of those brothers, and but none of them grew up in the same household with me. Matter of fact, I would probably be safe to say that I was somewhat raised as an old child for half of my childhood, right? So, I think society formed a lot of what I understood to be, right and wrong, or good and bad, or what I wanted or what I didn't want, right? So my grandfather was, he worked at the K-25 plant in Kingsport, Tennessee, which was the uranium plant that made the uranium for Big Boy, the Manhattan Project. And his badge number was 1. Badge number 1. And he was part of the Masonic Lodge there in Kingsport. And I did a little bit of history on him, a little bit of homework on him, but there's nothing. My dad is a closed book, man. The guy, I'd never been able to get my father to talk about him. So, I didn't really get interested in my grandfather because he died when I was 3. So I never even met him. My grandma, vaguely remember her. She died when I was probably 8 or something like that. But they all lived in Tennessee. Anyways, again, I didn't really have a lot of family, right? Or at least that I felt I didn't have a lot of family. So, naturally, I didn't have any religious upbringing. I wasn't exposed to any of that. I did have I think there was a feeling of loneliness that I carried with me for a really, really long time as a child. Father left when I was right after I got divorced. He moved away, and I stayed with my mom, who I didn't have a great relationship with. So, and we moved a lot. We were military brat. I was a military brat. So, we moved. I remember probably 6 times before I was in 3rd grade or something like that, right? And so didn't have like this connection with people, like long-term friendship. I had to go and start new friends. So anyways, like, I didn't have any like ingrained, familial stability, right?
Right.
So I tried to emulate a lot of that, or for what I saw in other people, right? And and I had to figure it out on my own. And the unfortunate part is, I picked up a few bad habits along the way.
It's a little rocky road at the beginning.
A little rocky road in the beginning. When I was 13 years old, I took my first drink, and that was the beginning of the journey for me. And to fast forward, that was a good solution for all of that missing stuff. Right.
For about 10 years.
For about 10 years, yeah. And until, fortunately for me, it was bad enough. There was enough pain and hopelessness involved to where
Suffering.
Yes, absolute necessity. You do not get to sidestep that little piece, I don't think. So I'm saying all this to get to this introduction to this idea of a higher power, this idea of a God of my understanding,
Right.
of
Lowercase g, big case G.
lowercase g,
whatever.
whatever it is. There's no affiliation whatsoever.
Right.
Right? So, and there, for me, began the journey of clearing all the wreckage, disseminate? No, just
Deconstructing.
well, assimilating these ideals, this understanding, this maybe way of living that I could use to navigate and create a life for myself. Right. And for me, it was slowly but surely this removal of anything that could obstruct the natural progression of the spiritual relationship that I was growing organically, whether I knew it or not, you know, because in very rare cases could I actually see it and feel that it was tangible, right? In most cases, it was like, in the beginning specifically, it was like, my life is horrible, it's a shit show, and I don't care if I can feel it or not, I'm not feeling that anymore. So I'm just going to do this. Right? So even in doubt, when I was, there were times when I wasn't willing, just for some reason or another, I'd still show up, and ultimately, going through that process, it's allowed me to get rid of a lot of like worldly ideas of what society would, maybe on the majority, tell me I should feel, tell me how I should feel, what I should believe, the things I should work for, the things that I should have, whether it was monetarily or, as a family, what my family should look like, all of these different things that the world wants me or tells me I should do, have, want, and go get.
Right.
And through this process, it's been, pretty incredible for me, because I can tell you this today, like, I don't feel like I conform to what, to different ideals like keeping up with the Joneses or, image management so much, right? Do I want to make sure my hair is not messed up? Sure. Do I want to make sure I don't have a coffee stain in the middle of my shirt? Sure. Yeah. But for the most part, I used to really, really care about what other people thought. And it really it would make or break how I felt inside.
Yeah.
Because I had this ultimate fear of not adding up, never adding up,
Being accepted by other people, family, whatever, friends.
Included. And ultimately, I've slowly been able to let go of a lot of those ideals and find confidence in myself and who I am and that I can provide for myself through this relationship I have. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And let's drill down on that a little too. So, and again, for everybody's unique in their, and I guess that's also one of the themes here is this: what is this subjective spiritual experience that I'm having? Mm-hmm. How do I go about it? How do I perceive it? How does it evolve? Right?
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody. But for you, for me as well, I suspect. So the suffering's there. We're forced to find another way.
Well, the suffering, the initial acknowledgement of suffering is there.
Right.
The initial.
I'm not talking about ongoing suffering.
Okay.
I'm talking about the
like
point,
the first
point
phase.
of clarity. Yeah, phase one. Suffering phase one.
Yeah.
Or two, or whatever it is. But like
Level 10.
that comes to a head, and it's like, I continue to do this. This, quickly leads to certain death, perhaps, or maybe just stay drunk for another 50 years, miserable.
Sure.
So, but at some point, it's like, well, the pain of living is too great. Living this way.
Mm-hmm.
I need to look for another way, and then hopefully there's other people that can help you. And then it's like, do I try something new? And even early on, I think Dave mentioned this. It's like, well, if I'm doing it just because somebody told me to do it, it may not take away from the effectiveness, but it's less than like a full personal motivation. Like, you can just follow instructions and be obedient to some sort of change or learning, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that may not exactly be like a full, mature spiritual life.
Well, knowing what, or believing what I believe today, I don't know if it's relevant.
Which?
Whether I believe what I think, right? To the extent that I make a beginning in this particular phase.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So if I, to jump back up to the 40,000 foot view, right? When I'm down on the ground, I'm like, this is about me. This is my life. This is what's going on. It's messed up. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. I can't go on another day. I just assume, end it, whatever. And then, fast, I can say it now, right? I couldn't say it then. And I think I probably fall back into this every now and again, but I can go back up to that 40,000 foot view and look back down and be like, man, you didn't have a choice. Like you got on and there was no getting off.
Right.
Or at least not yet. I haven't found it yet, right? So
I'm not talking. Yeah, I get that.
What I mean?
I'm not right. I'm not suggesting that it's like, here's what that belief looks like.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's what you're saying, right?
Well,
it's like
yeah.
It's not necessary. It's not. You don't have to define it so much. But the important part is it's not a reliance on self.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it's like it could be reliance on
I
anything other than self, and I'm going to see some results.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, I had to buy into it. You know what I mean? With
evidence.
Yeah.
It's like, well, here's what relying on self gets you.
Yeah. No, there was the evidence of how not to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Was very clear.
Ooh, and acute. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yuck. It was bad. I don't know. I was thinking about that whole. Oh my gosh, we were reading it. Maybe we read it. It was in a story we read, and it was a very descriptive explanation of all those feelings. When you're just walking in and life's really in shambles, and probably those last couple months, for some a lot longer, but when you look in the mirror and you're just like, when am I going to stop being a fuck up, man? Like, when are you going to stop fucking up, dude? Like, a real serious... And I know that's really putting it lightly, right? But looking at oneself in the eye, in the mirror, if you can bring yourself to doing that, you know what I mean? And just going, man, this has been going on for years. And it's as bad as it's ever been. And you thought it was going to get better long time ago. And it's, so...
and no identification of the cause.
None.
Really? Right.
No, I was dealt a shit hand.
Yeah, and that's going to work as long as it works.
That's what I'm saying. So, this is my life. This is all you get, dude. And so it's like, having to go run a race with shitty equipment. It's like this is like a top 20 car. You know what I mean? You're not going to run any faster than being in the top 20, right? So that's kind of how it was.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was like, this is how my life is going to be until I die.
Yeah.
There was no hope of anything changing, right? In spite of, moving, getting a different job, new girlfriend, new relationships, whatever.
Or even execution of the will. Like
that's all that is.
Right, but I'm saying normal thinking would be, well, you just got to try harder. I mean,
why don't you just do that less?
You just need a better plan.
Yeah. Trust me. I don't know how many of those conversations people tried to have with me.
Oh,
Hey man, when are you gonna? It's like, fuck, you know. It's like, give me another one. It's like done. I don't even want to hear it. Just completely shut down.
right. Oh my
know?
goodness. My
Yeah.
goodness. My goodness.
Yeah. So
Okay, so it's not prescriptive. Let's say, okay, I've got to rely on something other than self, and it's going to evolve over time. You have this evolution, but for me, the early revolution, like I mentioned, it just matters that it was not self, right? Because I know what that gets me.
Yep.
But then it doesn't matter what it is, and then it's going to evolve. It's going to change. But I guess, this seems to be rather universal. It's like I wake up, especially with alcoholism and addiction. If I'm awake, the chances of me drinking again are 100% every day. My understanding is that never changes, left to my own devices. So it's just a base requirement. You're awake, you're alive. A lot of people talk nowadays about triggers. It's like, well, you open your eyes. There's your trigger.
Yeah.
Tell me what's not a trigger.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is that trigger today may not be a trigger tomorrow, and what was not a trigger today can be a trigger. I don't get into that whole triggers and all that other crap, or signs, or whatever. Anyways, for me, it's like it's a thorough inventory of oneself. So what was it? What makes you tick? What are the what's going on with you? Who are you?
Yeah.
What are your pieces and parts that are affecting you in a way?
And in the 12-step structure, it starts, there's different components, but a majority of the inward, the soul-searching part, pen to paper, is let's start with your resentments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm poisoning myself, hoping somebody else dies.
Yeah.
It's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But resentments, fears, sex inventory.
Well, you start getting so I think another component really is this uneducated component where, for me, I don't think I was ever educated on any of that stuff as far as having any experience with
introspection.
Yeah. With what is a resentment? Right. How can that affect me? What are these feelings?
Right.
What is guilt? What is shame?
Yeah.
What is, what kind of, what can fear do to your life? How can that affect your relationships? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like,
how can it pollute every single thing you're trying to do?
Yeah. And how do you identify fear? Right? Yeah. Or can you identify fear?
This is triggering to me.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so but I don't think it's rocket science. I really don't.
But I think you find that out over the first 6 months, over the first year,
if you're lucky,
or two.
Yeah, if you're lucky. How I went, I didn't really understand, when they said, resentments have the power to kill. I didn't know. I was like, what are you talking about? Resentment has the power to kill. I'm not going to go kill anybody. Whatever. At least this is the off the cuff thought, right? And the reality for me was it puts me in those places. It can lead me down those alleys, and it can affect relationships to the nth degree in a very, very negative way.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Victimization.
It can you can do course changes of your life based on resentments. You know what I mean? It can change other people's lives based on an action or a behavior or whatever as a result of resentment, right? Which once you dig in, which is what I was able to learn, a process to help me get to the bottom of a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. You determine, you start asking the questions, and you start learning about those things. Why are we scared? What is it? Well, you're scared of not, and for me, and I'm trying to not get off in a big dissertation about all this or whatever.
Too late.
Yeah. All right. Well, just asking the question was never enough, right? Like, why were you mad? Who were you mad at? Okay, what did they do? All right, what did it affect? You know what I mean? And then you're like, oh, it affected my pocketbook.
Right.
Ah, I get it.
Yeah.
That's why you're resentful. Well, hold on a second. What's affiliated with your pocketbook? Like,
Yeah, financial insecurity.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Well, why is that so important? You know, like,
Right.
well, you know, what does that even look like?
This is such a
right?
rabbit hole. Of,
Yeah. All I'm saying is like, but from that, you can pull back, you can assess situations differently, right? I was able to find ways to assess all these different relationships and experiences that I was having or had differently and dive deep if I needed to, or sometimes it was very simple, you know. Ultimately, for me, I had this huge fear of not adding up, right? Was never going to add up. You know what I mean? And, but I got to that point where I would even know that information and it still affected me.
Yeah, sure.
You know? So, I can't really put my finger on exactly how that was resolved, like what date it was resolved, but only through life experience and life showing me what's valuable in my close relationships that I had today was I able to let go of this idea that it was relevant.
Right.
That I be accepted or that I add up to all these other people.
Yeah, and I just a guess, but I as I watched you go through a lot of this too, you really, your level of self-acceptance and letting go of not adding up. Mm-hmm. Like I saw that really came to fruition as you step back to be stay-at-home dad.
Yeah,
that was just my observation.
It was huge.
Right, because you're doing something that is opposite of what everything says you should be doing. Even in the life that I had built, I say that loosely, but even the life that was built for me over X amount of years, up until that point, which was basically right when COVID hit, I was still operating on a lot of these ideas that the world kind of put on all of us, coulda,
right?
shoulda, woulda.
Yeah, you need to thrive professionally. You need to progress, like consistently. You need to, make more than your wife. That was like in the back of my head. Like, I'm not going to tell her that, but I need to do this. You need to be, you at least need to keep up with her, right? Like you guys need to be on common ground financially. You got to get the big truck, whatever, all this crazy crap that it's not crazy to most people. It's just like, well, yeah.
How many other stay-at-home dads did you know at that point?
Zero.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent to where in most cases, like my next door neighbor, she is a stay-at-home mother. Also, she's got a boutique and a small business that she runs, but she's got a lot of friends that are stay-at-home moms.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, send their kid to the same, some of the kids the same. Anyway, she'd have all those moms over, and I would look out next door, and I'd see 25 cars parked up and down the street.
Right.
And I'm like, what? I'd talk to her the next day, and she's like, oh yeah, we had all these moms over, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, I'm cool. This was early on. I was like,
You were hoping for an invitation.
Yeah. The subconscious, the back of my head, I was like, I think I'm part of that group now. But the conversation started with, hey, Henry's got to go into preschool or not preschool, but we need to figure out what we're gonna do with Henry because I got to go. Angela's like, I got to go back to work, and we need to figure out if we need to get a nanny or do the day. What do you want to do? And she goes, well, what do you think about this? Would you be willing to stay home and watch Henry for like 6-8 months, whatever? And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, sure. If you need it, because I'm a family guy and I'll, whatever. I'm open-minded at this point in my life, right? I'm like to a place where like nothing ever has been presented to me that way as a life change, because that's a life change, right? It's a lifestyle change. I've spent 15 years building up a career as a contractor, as a project manager, on what I would think is a pretty decent, pretty high level. Had good wage, had all that stuff. Had good security, good 401k, had all the stuff, And then I remember talking with Henry, a close friend of mine, and he's about as open-minded as they get, when it comes to, not getting distracted by frivolous BS and looking at the bigger picture. And, after a long conversation, like, hey, man, you have a lot of potential here to have a really good life, man. And not from some, cheap way.
Shallow assessment.
No, this is like the relationship I have with my wife and the communication that I have with her and the way that we care for each other and what we want for each other. Like when this question was presented, she wanted the best for me and she wanted the best for Henry.
Yeah.
And so I could not deny that this was a genuine request for consideration. So
you couldn't duck or evade.
I couldn't sidestep it. Anyways, now getting to a place where you could give up 100% of what the majority of the world thinks you should probably do. Like that took all those years up to that point. That's how that works from what I think how it works for me. Like if I came in here in that place and you presented that, a couple years after I got out of trouble, I'd be like, you're out of your damn mind, dude. There's no way. Got too many things going on. Too many things that are way more important than what you just said.
Right.
And
than what you just said.
Yeah. So anyways, letting go of all those ideas, absolutely. It's kind of like taking the training wheels off. It's like, oh, I can ride this bike. I don't need a training wheels.
Yeah. So the self-acceptance, whatever, has to override all these other impositions.
Well, it does.
Self-thoughts or
100%.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, hold on, that's not real anymore. That idea was never real. It was never the rule.
Yeah.
I made that the rule.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
And then as soon as I let go of that idea, so many more doors opened up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the biggest things I've learned in the last 5-6 years is how I'm probably the reason I don't have more opportunities because of some narrow thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna know what it looks like from that new place because I'm not willing to do that.
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
So it's like when you were talking about doing this podcast, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll show up. Yeah. Let's do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like and it, from a personal and a spiritual place, like it was like, man, I have no idea, how this will end up. I have no idea what it's going to be, and I think having that attitude in not like an ignorant way, right? But in an open-minded way of stepping in to the next opportunity or maybe something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, take an act. Maybe it's an action.
Sure.
Or it could even be a lack of action in another scenario.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm going to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to start doing this or whatever the case is, right?
100%.
So, okay, so drilling down on, give or take, we'll do another, 20, 25 minutes, whatever we're going to do. So drilling down on like how, and I guess I want to talk about this because I think it's important for other people, but it's important for me too, is like even the expression. I've talked to my brother Steve, and he's a biblical Christian, just coming out of a particular church he was in, whatever. So other people, I myself think there's real common ground to be had, regardless of what someone's quote unquote this spiritual structure they're in, or religious structure, doctrinal, et cetera, et cetera. So I think. And this is why I want to get to, like, today, let's say, not so much advice for other people, and then another caveat also is like, we don't want to necessarily do the unprofessional psychotherapy, right? So like, warning.
Yeah.
Amateurs. We are amateurs just muddling through life on this also. But I guess sharing our experience with it.
No, it's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
But again, I say that just as an encouragement to anyone watching is like, don't do it alone. If you need professional help, get professional help. Because it can spin out into, this is the scenario where the morbid reflection can come in, and that it can be almost looking at it all can be worse than not looking at it if it's not a guided thing, etc. So word to that. But then the spiritual thing is essentially, so it evolves over time, and so let me just start. You don't have to start with this, but let me start. But what it's evolved to now, me, and I think we've talked about this, and I know I've talked about it with other people, but at literally any given point of my day, of my life, again, I'm awake. I'm behind enemy lines as an addicted person. The thinking is the problem, I haven't had a drinking or a drug problem forever,
Yeah.
So it's like the thinking, and so I need to remain peaceful as much as possible all day long. Things go good, things go poorly. I get what I want, I don't get what I want. I lose something, I gain something, it doesn't matter. Personal conflicts, parenting, out on the street. Like I've lost it a couple times with people running stop signs, like 2 that I can think about. No, I'm for fucking real.
I get it, man.
I just like, but again, that's all dangerous for me, at a very real sense. So what is this, my spiritual understanding? Here I am, here we are, the earth is spinning 1,011 miles an hour at the equator. We got gravity. We're dependent on oxygen. There's all these other beings. There's 8 billion people, right? There's natural disasters. There's catastrophe. There's personal health stuff. I'm diabetic. I've had some life-threatening surgeries and other stuff, right? How do I stay peaceful in all of this, in all of that, right? I'm not religious. I'm a bit anti-religious, I suppose, or anti-doctrine, if you want. So, like, I look at some of the offerings through humanity's history as, like, clearly false starts. It's like we didn't know that the universe is 14 billion years old. Clearly, we couldn't know that. So let's call it 6 days. Like whatever that is. And I'm not doing this to attack any particular person. I'm saying these are the questions I have to ask of myself. It's like, what does this mean to me? Well, that part doesn't mean anything. The virgin birth doesn't mean anything to me. People coming back to life from the dead, last time I checked, this happens every day in the medical community, right? Well, that's not a big deal. I mean, flatliners coming back to life, okay. So there's a bunch of stuff that I have to ask myself, is this the only life? Is it theism or non-theism? Is there a pantheism? Is there, consciousness itself? Is it emergent? Is it universal, a fundamental, a basis throughout the cosmos, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my part of what I'm saying is I can look at something at one level, be satisfied with an answer, and stop looking.
Yep.
That I know that about myself.
Yeah.
I'll come to an answer and that's it. I don't need to look anymore. So even from myself, and let's just say throughout my life, and I would call it an immature spiritual understanding. Is like, okay, you're going to heaven, eternal life. Here's going through this life. There's a lot of reasons to say, well, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Do this, do that, check the boxes, right?
Yeah.
There's a hell of a lot of reasons to arrive at an answer that I'm temporarily satisfied with, and then just stop looking.
Well, there's a lot of reasons to not also.
Not
there's
what?
Like, if you're looking, if we're talking about what we need on a spiritual level to not be involved, or to let go of this whole idea of self being involved, right? Like, what does it take, from a spiritual aspect? It's as challenging, or to me, for a long time, the challenge was, how could I not be involved? How could I not need more information? How could I not? I mean, how could I possibly settle with just this is enough information, right? And I believe the only way I could come to that conclusion and be okay with it, an idea or a thought like that, was to go through the experience of living my life and exerting all this effort into seeking something out of all these other things, right? I'm of the educational variety, unfortunately, or fortunately, right? So, not an overnight matter. It is, or has been, something for me that I've had to receive. I could not just go get it.
Right. And but we
yeah,
cultivate
no.
it. Yeah.
There is, and I've said this it seems lately I've said it to a few people just in conversation, is just that, like, there's no way for me to take what you have or somehow get what you have as far as an understanding, a true understanding.
Or reliance.
Or reliance. Yeah. Well, like, if this is what I believe, and holy crap, look at his life, there's no doubt in my mind that's not, that he believes that. I just need to believe that.
Oh,
and then
right.
I'll be okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right? Like, it just does not work that way. And not me. Like, I don't, like, you can have some sort of, I don't know, like, I look at all things spiritual, even some byproduct of religion, and I take that too. I use that too.
Yeah.
Only when needed, only when it's presented. Like this morning I woke up and I was going. I was like out the door going. I was like, man, I need to slow down. Gosh dang it, I didn't even slow down. I didn't even take a minute this morning. So I go on my podcast and I put on Alistair Begg. Alistair, you know who I'm talking about? Yeah. I can't remember the name of his podcast. Anyway,
Scottish. Is he
the
Scottish?
Yeah.
Scottish preacher.
I remember listening to this guy a long time ago, and he was just very attractive. The way he shared, and it was all biblical. It was very
the story, the delivery, all of it.
Yeah. So it was just like, okay. So anyways, and here's the thing. I don't read the Bible. I've never read the Bible. I don't have the patience to read the Bible. I'm probably skeptical on most things, for a lot of reasons. But just like I was when I walked in the door, like, I'll get religion when I get old. It was just a weird idea of how that all worked.
Yeah.
But I've also learned that there's a message, and I've also been taught that people like that have been doing this a lot longer than I have, believing in a power greater than themselves, relying on a spiritual solution, Right. So because they get it out of this book that I may not buy into 100%, doesn't mean they might not have a good message. So all I'm getting at is that, like, I can if I'm willing to listen to to that particular, if there's something attractive about that, I'm willing to listen to that. Now, what makes that attractive to me, I don't 100% know all the time.
Yeah.
Some things, and I believe that's a big part of how this higher power, this God, in my understanding, works in my life. He presents these things, these opportunities to hear. And, for me personally, it was, the biggest piece for me to find, kind of to go back to the answer of maybe the first part of this question, which was how can you find some understanding or peace or happiness?
Yeah, or how do you?
How do I?
Yeah.
And it's by keeping it as absolutely simple as I can. And how I can explain that came to be is because I would do the complete opposite. And over the years, I've slowly removed or been able to clear away some of this self-made process of needing on how I would understand or come to understand. Right? Or even better yet, through the process of cleaning house, I've just been removing shit that's been in the way. Right?
Yeah.
So only to get to this place where I can say, man, I want to stay right. I want to be right here with you, Dave, right now.
Right.
And this is, and all I can say, everything that I would say, everything that I'm about to say in reference to this has all come about through doing it the complete opposite way. Right? And then just including this power greater than myself, this God of my understanding, into the process. Just like, okay, just believing that he's right there. Okay. And by doing that, I think I can give him some credit as to how all of this has come about. Right. And the reason I can do that is because I can look at my history and say, well, left to my own, there's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Amongst other things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this awareness, like asking for awareness.
Right.
Okay. Like
right.
if you believe in prayer.
Yeah.
Right.
And we could talk about that briefly too.
Well, and yeah, I mean, that's definitely a part of this process as far as like prayer being an element. But whether it's meditation or prayer, whatever that is, it's a concentrated effort on
specific. Yeah. And I've taught, well, I mean, again, this gets a little hairy, but I try to keep it a part of my consciousness. It's like a state.
Sure.
A state of prayer, a state of meditation.
So it's not a formal effort.
This is what I'm saying.
I agree with you.
Right. Okay.
I agree with you.
Now, like, what is...
I do that. That's important.
There's that part of it. Mm-hmm. But what's the mechanism, right?
What do you mean?
Like, well, this is what I'm asking is, for me, if let's just say, and especially early on, get on my knees. There's a prayer, like just a pleading to, whether it's a God or whether it's the universe or whether it's nature, whatever. It didn't really matter. And this was what I came to understand, is that the prayer or praying or meditating, right? It was about the effect that it had in me coming to prayer. It didn't matter who I was praying to, or whether someone was listening or not to the 8 billion people praying or whatever. Yeah. What mattered was, this is the path of humility. Is it? I don't know
the
all
action
the
and the
answers.
Discipline.
Yeah. So it's a manifestation of humility.
Yeah.
It's like I can come humbly to the universe, knowing what I know, knowing that there's a lot of things I don't know.
Yeah.
Here's my liabilities. Here's my assets. Here's who I am.
Yeah.
Let me just come in this spirit of humble prayer or humble meditation.
Sure.
To speak prayer, maybe listen. I got 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah. It's a complete surrender of the idea that you have some sort of control or some sort of
influence
or even understanding of what all of this means. It's
Yeah.
all. It's like a complete, utter.
Just wipe the slate.
Yes. Like, here's all my problems. Here I am.
Yeah.
This is for you to do with however you want, and use me however you will.
But does it
That's
matter
it.
if there's a you anywhere, or if it's just nature
No,
of the universe?
no, 100%. However you
Right.
perceive that. And here's the thing. It's really more out of practice anymore, or not practice, but a habit for me. Like when you talk about this state of prayer, like you have to believe that that's a thing. You have to believe that that's even, because if you're a religious person, you might say, well, that's not prayer. Like you need to be on your knees to praying to God, or
right,
you need to
okay.
you need to put your hands together, or you need to shut your eyes.
Specific action,
Whatever.
looks a certain way, whatever.
Yeah, but no,
okay.
guess when I am alone by myself, or even when I'm with somebody or whatever, and I'm quiet and I can turn my focus to that relationship and be present in that relationship, everything's fair game. Anything, whether I receive or whether I give,
Yeah.
it's all part of that relationship.
And that is being directed.
That's
That is
100%.
being led.
Yeah.
That's that state of humility.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to give short shrift to these words either, right?
Yeah.
Check what time it is.
We're good.
Okay, another 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're good.
So yeah, let's touch on, and that of course that this seems to make sense.
Sure.
For me, obviously my experience makes sense to me, but you sharing your how you interact with this, the spiritual essence of thing, the luminous, the transcendental.
I know there's so many names for it, or there's
Right.
no names for it.
Yeah. It's a state of being.
I know.
Being.
And the less there is, the better it is. The less identification there. I mean, it's really like this dissolving into that spirit, that idea, that belief, and not the constructs of fill in the blank.
Here's what it's got to look like.
Yeah, and it's not.
Yeah.
And it's all a culmination of for me, in my experience, the culmination of when I was introduced to this idea organically on a spiritual level by other people that had similar experiences.
But motivated by the intense suffering.
Intense
It's not
suffering.
like I'm just coming to this because
No,
it's a good
no.
thing.
No, there was, I mean, oh my God, how I wish.
Right, you could have just, and this
You know what I mean?
This might jump us into virtue real quick.
Okay.
So, yeah, because listen, it sounds really good. I just want to be a better person.
Oh man, look how happy those guys are.
Yeah, or how about just claim it for myself? Why do you live this way? Why do you do this? Well, why does anybody do anything? For some people, they say, well, to enter into the gates of heaven. For other people, it's like, well, here's my checklist. I'm goal-oriented. I'm motivated. I be this, have that, do this, whatever.
Very external, yeah.
Yes. And Big Dave and I talked about this too.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than have, do, be, it's like be, do, have. Start with the being, maybe. But again, I think this is on a continuum of spiritual maturation, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you start there.
Sorry.
There's a lot. No, there's a lot going on behind us.
I know.
So,
It's nice out.
but yeah, I wish to be out right now.
Yeah. No, it's great.
So, virtue, the claiming of virtue, right? And so we've talked about this humility being essentially a path, like I'm on the path toward humility. It's not a destination. I don't think at some point I'll just check that box and go, I've arrived,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it seems to be a path between the extremes. Is that you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead. We're okay. Go ahead.
So basically an avoidance of the extremes. And so with that, it's like, don't claim one or the other of the assets or the liabilities. And
Yeah.
and it really comes down to the assets. It's like I'm going to claim all the assets,
Well,
even down to the level of motivation.
It seems to me that if you're going to claim a formal description of virtue, then yeah, there's certainly an argument for maybe maybe a reason why that's not 100%, something to stand behind, right?
But this is where I think it's imperative that I feel like I have to understand it, because the potential is I just exist over here in this virtue balloon, which is not real.
I think I get it. If that's how you operate,
no.
if I just operate off of virtue, and that's it.
Yeah, patting myself on the back the whole way.
I'm a good person. This is the right thing to do.
Doing
Period. Next. Yeah. And it's like, no. First of all, if you're like you and I, in the sense that we've come about with an understanding of what this kind of czar of the universe is, right? Or whatever you want to call it, right? Then you probably came up, as the young kids would say it, on the streets. You came up and you weren't. That was horrible.
My streets were pretty vanilla.
Well, all I'm saying, like as a metaphor, right? All I'm saying is, like, we didn't go to church. We weren't raised in some sort of religious community and structure. We weren't given the the credo of what virtue should be, and that's how you live your life, and then get beaten into discipline to operate like that. Like, that's not how we came about it, right? So the idea that what I believe is being, and I think some of our literature talks about this, being undisciplined, we allow him to discipline us in this way, right? So my description of all of this, I use the word virtue, okay? So, like, when somebody, and I use it probably incorrectly, okay? Because I always refer to what I believe and how I live as being in this gray area. I operate in the gray area. I live most of my life in this gray area. And what that sounds like to some people is like, you do messed up shit and you're okay with it.
Ambiguity.
Yeah, like you just co-sign and validating whatever bullshit you want to say. It's like, you say whatever you want to say. I don't really give a shit if you believe me.
But that's not what you mean.
No, what I mean is that I'm open to God using my assets or my liability as assets, and therefore sometimes these assets are going to be liabilities, but on the flip, they're probably going to be helpful to somebody. The dominoes fall and they don't stop falling when an action is taken, good or bad.
Right, okay.
And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but as a result of that actually being true, what I believe to be true, I would be remiss if I said that was bad and this behavior was now. And
then there's the lesson in this whole assessment.
Sure.
Good, bad, liability, asset is.
So when I refer to virtue, like if I say I have virtue, I think what I'm really trying to say is that that within me, I'd like to think that there's some sort of God consciousness as to what I should do next, or how I might handle a particular situation, of which may arise, and in that moment will be handled how I'm supposed to handle it.
Right. Okay. Right? Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, as best you can at the time, perhaps.
Yeah. Or whatever.
Inputs,
yeah. Whatever it is. Yeah. So so I don't use it correctly as the theory might, describe, but as a result of life experience and going through this process, I feel I have a lot better abilities and I guess what the signal is a lot better, right?
Yeah.
The antenna's fixed a little bit better.
Sure.
There's not as much static.
Or the volume's turned down.
The volume's
on a
turned
lot
down.
of the
It's clear.
liabilities.
I can hear a lot clearer today.
Okay,
and,
sure,
You know,
yeah.
on a spirit, I'm not in any shape, way, or form, acting like I'm I'm the last person. All I'm trying to say is, like, in my life, for me, it feels like I've cleared, or not necessarily but a lot of crap has been cleared away, out of the way, so that I can actually hear what's being said.
Just getting rid of earwax. Really.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So,
All right, and what time is it? Let's see. Okay, so real quick, in another 5 minutes. So here's what I would like to talk about.
Okay.
And again, we're just going to touch base on on this idea of supposed altruism. Okay.
Okay.
Well, listen, this is the point, because the second I am in the deciding mode, I'm vulnerable to mess it up. Okay? That's it. That's the point I even got to look at.
Once you're past it, you're okay.
No, it's like, if I can get out of the attribution business, I'm okay. Okay? So, for a long time, I'd run around, pick up new guys, we'd be going to meetings, we're doing this, we're doing that, whatever. Yeah. And unbeknownst to me, I literally was completely ignorant of what I was doing with that activity. I turned it into an egoic exercise. I turned it into spiritual ego, as though I'm doing the good Lord's work. I did that for a long time.
Sure, okay.
So what came out of that was just stop with the egoic part of it, which is claiming this and not that. I benefit from helping people. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay to benefit from helping people. They call it enlightened self-interest, whatever. But you would think, I look at the information that's out there, and a lot of people don't claim the self-benefit in helping someone else. That's all.
That's why I do it. That's why I would do it.
That's one of the reasons.
Well, from a very simplistic standpoint, I didn't make this thing up. I didn't create the solution.
Right.
I did not format and lay it out. That's not how it works. What had happened was, somebody gave it to me. Somebody started helping me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they said, "Hey, dude, it's just like this. It's like, hey, if you're gonna work here, this is how we do it. You gotta come in here in the morning. You turn on the lights. You start up the fryers. Right. You go cut the vegetables. By 9 o'clock, you gotta have this prepped and this cooked, because we open the doors at 10. It's like, okay, so you come in here and they're like, hey, dude, all right, you're gonna go here. You're gonna do this every day, and then, if you want to be successful, a lot of guys do this. It's like, okay. And then you always want to be doing this, and these are generally just suggestions, right? But they're things that 99% of anybody that's successful has probably done to some extent or another in their own experience, right? So all I'm getting at is that there's no debate for me today. If anything, I feel the opposite. I should do more.
Okay, sure.
You follow me?
Yeah.
I get what you're saying from that perspective, but I didn't want to do this to begin with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, to just summarize, what I'm saying is, for example, do good, do bad. Do something helpful, do something harmful. We exist on this path of humility. I've got my liabilities, my assets, right?
Sure.
So opportunity presents itself. Do it or don't do it. Just get out of the claim.
Well, and probably this would be
for me.
I get it.
This is why it's important for me.
So that makes me think about this particular subject of God's will for us.
Oh, okay, fine.
No. It's a conversation to be had, because in my opinion, I've had a bunch of different ideas as to what that actually is. And if you ask 5, 6, 7 different people, they're going to give you 5 or 6, 7 different answers. And most of them are going to be like some bullshit cliche crap, like the next right thing or something like that.
Yeah, I hate that philosophy.
I hate it. It's not even real, right? It's not even real. Like if what we're told about the unmanageability in our lives is true, which I'm sorry to tell you, for me, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Then what do you know about what's right? And like, you want to do this whole right and wrong thing. Like, okay, cool. Now go do that. You'd probably be okay. All right. But I don't know if you're going to learn a bunch of stuff. I don't know if you're going to learn much at all. Now, that's just my 2 cents. So to wrap up the quick version of this conversation, for me and what I believe and how I get by today, is God's will for me is to walk hand in hand. Is that we're together on this journey. So I don't like, and because of that, I don't have to get into the results business. Like, hey, we're like, it's a belief that there's a partnership and that there's a relationship here, that if I'm including this God of my understanding, then and regardless, I'm going to be okay, because that's ultimately what I wanted in the first place, man. Just want to be okay. You know?
Right.
I think if I go way back and I get rid of all the shit that's covering up that, like if I can get to the bottom of it, I just want to be okay. And
right.
That's a loaded statement, okay? Can be. But anyways.
Yeah. Peaceful. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're there right now.
Yeah, man, that's good.
Let's maybe we can avoid the gutters. Or maybe the gutter needs to teach us something. I don't know.
Unfortunately,
we're going to show up.
Unfortunately or fortunately.
Right.
That's just part of the gig. So.
Yeah, love you, brother.
Yeah, I love you too, man. Appreciate it, bro.
Stay tuned. Share, like, subscribe. Appreciate your audience. Todd?
Awesome, brother. Thank you.
I almost knocked over that mic.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for coming on again, and we will talk soon.
Awesome, brother. Thanks.
To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to Prophetic, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history